Hello. Welcome everybody to You Can't Say That, episode number 12. We're here with the gang.
Yay, number 12.
I can't hear you.
What? You can't hear me?
Well, now I can.
That is disrespectful.
How about me? Do you got me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
What about me?
I can hear everyone but Joy.
God damn.
I'm working on it.
All right. Well, I'm working on trying to find out where we're at.
Oh, his
So I
camera needs
can
to go up a little.
pull us up and look at some. All right, so listen, man, we are back. And what week are we? What is it again?
It is episode number 12.
Episode 12. And, we're going to talk about some things today. Got a number of things to discuss as we move forward.
You want to explain to the wonderful people why we didn't stream yesterday?
Yeah, we didn't stream yesterday because we were in we had a quiz. And so we would only have about, we'd only have maybe a half hour, 20 minutes or half hour to stream. And so it's just not worth it. But we'll be back actually on Thursday. This coming Tuesday is Korea Day. So we are quite looking forward to it. Have a guest coming, and all the way from Soulsville.
They're coming all the way just for us. Not
Not just
really,
for us.
but-
Well, we'll say it is, but why not? I think they're coming to. Yeah, we're just somewhere on the way to somewhere else, so it's all good, and we'll be rocking. And so anyway, it's a class on Korea. We've got some performers coming in to do a performance, and it just feels good. Feels like it'll be an interesting day. I want to talk about some things we've never discussed. So we're going to do a couple case studies that we've not done.
Are we still going to touch on colorism? Was that girl Chinese or was she Korean? That episode, the class with the skin?
I think she said
And
she was
her
Taiwanese.
herself. Oh, she was Taiwanese.
I think we're gonna let's hit colorism. Why not? I think we should, because you know what? I had a woman contact me from, I think she's from Atlanta, and I don't know if I said this on the stream, but she sent me an email and she said I was watching one of an episode or a class, and she said I was so annoyed I wanted to jump through the camera and grab the microphone.
Which episode?
I was trying to get some black or brown students to talk about colorism, and they just wouldn't go there. They pretended as though, or they spoke as though it wasn't really a big issue in the community. And she said, my life has been defined
That's a lie.
by colorism. Exactly. So when she first wrote, I was so annoyed watching watching your class, I was thinking, oh my God, okay, what did I say? Right. But it wasn't. It was that students, black and brown, and she herself she's defined herself as, identified as African American, and just said, look, it has shaped my entire life, and I was so annoyed. I wanted to really be in the classroom and say some things about what actually goes on. So anyway, I think we will talk about that, because I think it's really valuable to discuss. And there'll be a lot of Korean students in our class, because a lot of students have found out that it's Korea Day. So,
Can we also have a conversation about hair in Korea?
Hair?
Mm-hmm. Because they'll walk around, there's like this perm over there. Ooh, hold on, they have like this perm where they too have an afro.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And some of them will get locks. Some of them will lock their hair.
Yeah. It's not common though, right? Or is it? Is it increasing?
More. I mean, I feel like it could come up depending on how much you're talking about music, because there's a great hip hop scene in South Korea as well. So that's where you find it. And BTS, are you going to be talking about BTS specifically?
Yeah, we'll talk about BTS.
Specifically, since they are a male group.
Yeah.
And they have like Suga V and Rap Monster.
Yeah.
They're rappers.
Yep.
Yeah, you could connect it to introducing to the other segues of music in Korea and hip hop and the culture there.
Okay, so when we're talking about K-pop though, we're not seeing this in K-pop at all. Like
hip hop rapping?
No, like people locking their hair and this sort of thing. Right?
In certain scenes, not in the mainstream. Not.
But it's in the hip hop culture.
For sure.
Got you. Yeah. That's what I've seen also.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No. Okay. Let's go there. In fact, we might have to bring you out as a guest.
I can speak on it.
All right.
It would be also, I don't know how interesting it would be for other people, but I just saw a few articles about the oldest member of BTS.
Yeah.
Is at the last year or second to last year in which he has to sign up to be part of the South Korean military.
Yeah, exactly.
And some celebrities are able to get past that, but for some reason the government's saying that he won't be able to do that, and the entire band will have to do their military service. But they're like, listen, we're trying to we have careers and we need to do this. And
that's not how that shit works. You are a South Korean citizen.
But there are celebrities who don't have to do it, and
that's
they're trying to
I don't know which any of those.
Let's find out. That's actually a question for somebody. Certainly the colorism issue in Korea. I mean, listen, one thing that I'm starting to read, it's sort of like vaping, that suddenly we're talking about the problems associated with vaping, and people are suddenly, and I'm not exactly sure why, talking about the dangers of skin whitening cream and all the chemicals and so on, right? Which, I mean, why is it now just sort of making front page news, which is kind of interesting. Maybe it's only because we're talking about it more, but
a question from the chat. And by the way, if you're listening to this via audio, you can join us every Friday at 12 p.m. Most Fridays, almost every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And you can chat along in the live stream chat. Are we going to define colorism? Because some people don't know what colorism is.
Fine.
Yes.
We can do that for them.
I love defining words.
Go ahead. Why don't one of you define it?
I mean, it's an ism. So, boom. I think, or I would define colorism. Is it a social construct? It's just one of those things where it's one of those things in place where it has the ability to affect you in society, depending on your community or whichever scale you're looking at it, based off of your skin.
Okay, go ahead.
It's part of a social construct like racism has been a part of the social construct for a long time. Hi, can you hear me better now? Okay, so colorism is basically the tendency to prefer someone of like a specific skin tone to someone of varying skin tone. Like in the Black community, it's like it's preference to those with lighter skin to then people with darker skin. Like I wouldn't be considered light skin. I'd be like in between, but people tend to lean towards lighter skin anyway.
So in the lighter skin communities and among your people of European ancestry in particular, it's the tendency to prefer browners. Okay, so
I know what you're trying to say.
Like this, there's like there are differences I talk about differences on a horizontal axis and then differences on a vertical axis. And horizontal is just difference, like light skin, medium pigmented skin, darker pigmented skin, whatever. It's just differences, right? But when you take that axis and you turn it this way, and it suddenly becomes whatever is down at this end of the axis is less desirable, less good, less beneficial, less of whatever, however you want to define that. And people at this end of the axis, it's better. So it's taking a horizontal difference and turning it vertically. And that's the ism part, I think. So, yeah, exactly what you're saying. So for white people, you don't want skin that's too light because that's like really dry.
Somebody asked, said that colorism comes from slavery in the U.S. And I'm not sure, but I'm not sure about that because I know, for instance, Dimitri doesn't like to be dark. And I know a woman from Japan who every time we go on vacation, she refuses to go outside because of colorism. Because she walk around with an umbrella? Or she'll walk around with an umbrella because
that doesn't mean it's not derived from our slave system.
Yeah, in the Black community, it is partially derived from like being like slaves being in the house and having lighter skin because they're not in the sun, and like darker skin people being out in the.
But I don't think it necessarily came from the United States though. I think it came from
doesn't
the culture
necessarily, but it is definitely
I know in
a
the
part
Black
of it.
community for sure, but like in Japan, it's been like that for however long because you don't want to be outside and mostly the stereotype is what she would always say is she didn't want to be somebody who worked in agriculture because agriculture were people who were poor and worked outside. Right?
So,
exactly.
So there are actually a lot, historically speaking, and going to different places around the world, there are lots of, we can pinpoint lots of sort of original causes of that. Like what are the what's the sociological reality that takes skin differences and turns them on a vertical axis to better and worse. So in different parts of the world, there are lots of things that sort of cause that. So one would be kind of that class status is mostly related to class, but not entirely. And there are places in time and space where having darker skin was preferred for various reasons. So it's not, but yeah. But I think now, and because of the power of what we saw in these, when Europe underdeveloped Africa, we will say, between, like from the 1500s through the 20th century.
I like that word.
We see that we see lighter skin mostly preferred. But some communities have been able to resist that quite well. So,
right. Interesting.
Okay.
Do we want to talk about Tuesday's class?
What did we talk about?
Let's describe Tuesday's class for people who were not with us.
Choice and chance.
Choice versus chance.
I love
man. It's funny that choice and chance, it's everything. It really is everything. I felt like I wanted to just
tell the Haiti story.
Nah, tell what story?
The Haiti story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't tell that story.
Sunday. I mean, it took a time, but I feel like that's a great example because there were so many different moving parts in time.
Yeah. That
inevitably connected from the chances of and making decisions to.
Yeah. What I see at some point in the class, I started to get really excited because, people sit in class and they kind of sit back in their chairs and they sort of do the no face thing. So they're like just listening like this, whatever it is, not being excited. And meanwhile, I'm so excited with presenting certain ideas because I'm fascinated by the ideas, and if people understood how much choice and chance understanding causality by breaking it down, and we're it's a binary, right? So everything's in between, but like if you just start there, and how much that shapes how we think about everything in the world and in our lives. If people really understood that, they would be excited as I was on Tuesday talking about it. But sometimes that's often not the case because it's everything. Man.
Well, it's funny because during like me watching the chat, I would see people who agreed with you when you said it was choice, and then you said, and it's also chance, and they were like, I like the first part, but they won't admit the fact that it's both, because most people will look at issues as choice or chance, and so when you try to get them to think of it together, it doesn't compute. It's like that woman with the meme, with all the numbers around her.
No, look, it's just like Halloween. I think about Halloween has become this. Lori and I were talking about this yesterday, how Halloween's become this consumer holiday now, and everybody gets costumes and everybody dress up. You didn't do that. Nobody did that when I was in college, 30 plus 30, 40 years ago. It just, no, because what happened was I traced it back. I don't know if this is true. I'd love to see someone write something on this, but I trace it back to when China started to they're shifted toward mass production of consumer goods, mostly stuff that nobody really needed, and so suddenly you get these really inexpensive ornaments, and so we see Christmas blow up, and we see Halloween blow up, and we see 4th of July and Thanksgiving and everything, and everyone's just buying all this crap that they don't need, and they can do it, and it's really inexpensive, and I can get a cheap costume, and suddenly so many things in consumer cultures like the United States blew up that necessitate people buying cheap stuff, right? And the emergence of Walmarts and this kind of thing, and it just allows us to buy crap that we didn't have. Otherwise, when I was young, you bought an inexpensive. Kids could buy a costume, but adults couldn't buy costumes. You had to make your own costumes. So nobody ever did that. But now you can just order off and have it sent to your doorstep on Amazon. So anyway, people think, oh, but I'm choosing my costume. First off, you're living at a particular point in time where you're not choosing. You're actually being shaped by all these factors and forces around you, and by the ability to buy inexpensive costumes from Amazon or Walmart or wherever it is you get your costume, or all these places like at Halloween. I don't know if we used to, people rent out empty stores and they just fill them with Halloween costumes. That's been going on for the past 20 years. And then they just, after Halloween, they just close down and they move on. And okay, well, it's not choice then. It's like it's being shaped, it's chance, it's being shaped by other things. And then within that, I make some kind of a choice. Choice and chance goes together. You cannot
have one without the other.
No, you can't. You absolutely can't. And it's just, if you see the excitement for me of seeing that and of living within that, and of course the problem is it complicates my life immensely because I can never know once I embrace the idea that freedom and determinism or choice and chance come together, then the more I have to accept that I am not in control of, I am only partially in control of some of the things in my life. And that, most people don't want to, it's hard to live with that.
Do you think that those kind of, the point doesn't get grasped given each lecture just because people aren't old enough and haven't thought or lived through whatever enough experience to think about it? Or is it more of the times of how we're disconnected and everything, all our attentions are outward things?
Oh, man, that's really interesting. I think mostly it's because people aren't willing to open their minds to go that extra layer, like peel the mind back, right? And go that extra level. Look, I'm not advocating drug usage or anything, right? But it's like people, when I was a kid, right, and I would, smoke pot, and I would have these really deep thoughts that I never had before, because I would peel something back, and something would sort of fall away, and I'd see it a little bit differently, and then I'd say, oh man, and then I would go a little further, and then it opens certain doorways to seeing the to holding two contradictions in place, choice and chance, right? Both are the multifaceted causality that comes into play when you hold both types of things together. So anyway, I just think, I know I had that experience when I was a kid because the cannabis forced me to have it. But if I didn't have that, I don't know that I would have been able to, or either because I'm too lazy, or I just didn't know, or I couldn't do it, or I just couldn't take my mind there. We're not taught to peel the mind back. We're really not. And so we just don't know how. And we're not challenged to think in our educational system, and so mostly we don't. That's my feeling on it. It's not about age, it's really about, but man, when you see it cosmically, it's like, whoa. You can't, we all want to pinpoint something, right? Like Lori has these, here's a perfect example, right? Lori has these allergies that she just gets out of nowhere, so where it's very it's a histamine reaction to something, we don't know what it is. And I cannot, and we're at the place where we're thinking that it's multi-causal. If there's even a cause to it. We don't even know if we could ever pinpoint a cause, but at the very least it's multi-causal. Because at the beginning we thought it was just food. So soy causes this, and no, it doesn't appear to be, but it must be this other thing over here, and we kept trying to pinpoint it, and we were certain it was one thing, one, and we couldn't. And so then we thought, it's two together, so it's two different kinds of foods together, or three, or whatever. Oh no, it's when you have food at a certain time, and then because she doesn't get it every day. She'll get it for a couple days and then not get it for a couple months. And then we started thinking, oh no, it's in the air. But I cannot stop my mind every time she wakes up in the morning, like she did today, with this histamine reaction. I cannot stop my mind from saying, what did you eat last night? Mm-hmm. Like, what did you eat? Meaning, like, what one thing did you eat that caused that? We've already discovered or decided that it's multi-causal. It's so many things. But I cannot stop my mind for every time asking her, what did you eat last night? Focusing on that one thing. You see what I mean? So it's like choice and chance. I'm looking for the one tiny thing, when in fact what we're saying is it is a layering of complexity that is leading to this reaction on the part of her body. But I can't stop myself from going there. And if I can't do that in this instance, and I've trained my mind to live in the middle, what about other people, right? That's what I think.
Damn.
Well, I just blew my own mind, actually, with that example.
Jeff, would you say that's the same thing as like what we were talking about when I'm saying individuals who choose their pronouns, or maybe choose isn't the right word, but people who say their pronouns are they, them, but I'm like, well, I don't really see it. Like, I look at you, and if I see you as a man or a woman, I'm just naturally going to say he or she. Like, I work an effort into saying they or them. That's the same thing.
I don't know. The thing that you said that really came to my attention was something about age and how the older you are, maybe not the most that you don't know a lot necessarily. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was experience that popped in my head. Experience is what you gain as a person. And so experience with somebody who's in the LGBT community, who identifies, mostly the T community, who identifies as non-binary to the point where they say that my pronouns are they, their, and them. It's not necessarily an age that's going to allow us to say, well, you just don't understand that you're not old enough. That's never actually been a real thing. You can be 75 years old and you've never left your own state or your own country. You're going to have no experience. You're not going to know anything. So it's the same thing to me with the community, like the LGBT community, where we could be in the community and we can even live in the community for a long time. But if we're not actively talking and engaging with people and getting those experiences, because the first time I ever met a trans person, I was like, I could never call you they, their, them.
Yeah.
They is multiple persons.
Right.
Well, actually, it isn't, but it's multiple people. I can't say they. That just sounds weird. But when I experience it and talk to them and actually realize the fact that we say they as singular as well, and that's proper English, and that little tiny thing just took a barrier of entry out of my brain of what can and can't I say about this person, because, well,
that's awesome.
You don't identify as the same exact thing as me, so now I can't understand. Well, you just got to gain some experience.
Dude,
just
that's
talk
awesome.
to people.
That's why it's cool. That's one of the reasons I love being on a college campus, because I'm around people who are creating language, creating ideas. Most college students certainly here they're at the liberal end of stuff, right? Whatever. But nonetheless, people are really creatively doing some cool things with ideas and thoughts. Just words, right? And so I learn new words, and I learn new words, and words shape how I see things. So it's like you just said, they. I have such a hard time with that. And then one day I said to myself, why do I have a hard time with that?
Well, it's like,
who cares?
We don't think that the proper way of saying something would be, hey, they're in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, is it one person? Is it 5 people? Like, you really don't know.
Dude, exactly.
And it doesn't even matter. It doesn't change the grammar of it. It doesn't change. But for some reason, grammar is something that we struggle over when trying to communicate with people who are different.
Totally, man. The first time one of my students asked me to call her they, and I rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh, man, are you serious? Like, come on, man. And then it just took me a while. Like, I'm really open and I'm really flexible, and yet it takes me time. Like sometimes I got to catch up a little bit, and
I wonder if, because you just said the first time that a student asked, but you said she or her or something, and then you said man.
So it was
later.
She was identified, born identified female. Was transitioning somehow, not biologically transitioning, but was just transitioning in gender.
Right.
And it was back when everyone's just kind of playing around with this, very new, sort of playing around. How are we going to settle in with this term "they" when we apply it to somebody's sex or gender? So now we've sort of gotten, sort of there. People over time, when enough people do it, there's certain norms that come into place. Like most people decide, hey, I'm going to use it in this way. Mm-hmm. And there are always going to be a few holdouts that'll be like, well, I'm going to stretch the limits and I'm going to use it over here. But when you first bring something like that into the world, nobody really knows. And so we got to sort of wait and just see how things settle. Like, how's the dust settle? Like, where does it go, Mm-hmm. Anyway, so now we sort of have it. But back then, it just didn't really. Hey, by the way, I really want to respond to abracadabra, a couple things here. But yeah, that's a really cool example. I like that.
Yeah. It's the first time that you ever experience anything with another person that's different.
Totally.
And it's not necessarily that they call themselves a different gender. It's anything about their culture, anything about, because, you'll see a white person and you'll be like, well, I can identify with them because they're also white, and that's at least at some place we're going to be similar. But then you talk to them and you're like, what? No, like people are different.
Yes.
Regardless of their race or religion or anything.
I experience a lot. Like when you're in a place like this, and I'm saying like as a black woman in a very white space, you have that kind of moment when you're like going to house parties or whatever in college, and you find that black person, and you're like, oh, I'm not the only one. And then you go over there and to talk to them, and they're weird as fuck. It's like, yo, you're not even black, get out of my face. Or like,
oh, you're just a weird person.
You're fucking weird, and I'm still here by myself.
Yeah. You're not my people, man. Exactly. Like, but this is what we have to break through. Hey, listen, man, I want to just go back really fast to abracadabra. Mm-hmm. Made a comment about that colorism against dark-skinned females. It's primarily colorism is mostly discrimination against dark-skinned females, and I just want to disagree with that.
Yeah, I didn't even see that, but that's like a strong disagreement.
No, it's mostly talked about as discrimination against dark-skinned females. That's just where the conversation emerges mostly. So I agree with that. But colorism as a term, as a process term, is mostly that, because that's just how we discuss it. But if we actually look at what it means, it's not about men or women. It's about it's everybody equally. But I do see that.
Yeah, and the conversation tends to come up that it's like dark-skinned females that get the most like put out, but it's dark-skinned everybody that gets put out. It's just that the conversation more so happens to where it's like, oh, these females, like I like my females light skin, and that's like
exotic.
Yeah, light-skinned females are exotic, and people like that better. But then people do the same thing with light-skinned dudes and dark-skinned dudes. Like it's not just females.
Yeah, exactly, and it's every community. It's not. Hey, I don't use Caucasoid, Negroid, and Mongoloid because these are, years, since the beginning, I suppose, of the origin of science, and meaning developing some sort of classification systems, because that's what science is.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What are those words?
No, I can tell you, actually. So when people started creating classification systems going back to the 17th century, like, and I'm not going to throw any names out because it doesn't matter. The Europeans were doing it, but it's cool, right? Like, think about this. When people started traveling around the world on boats, this is my take about my reading of history about how this stuff happened, and I think it's actually I'm probably right on with it, but I could never I've never seen anyone say this, but when we really see this with the emergence of science, which also happens to be the same time that people started really in a larger way jumping on ships for expeditions and then landing in other lands and then seeing people who are very different from them. So think about this. If you start walking from, let's say, Turkey, and you go from Turkey and you walk all the way down through the straits and across the Nile and down to Namibia, let's say, and you're walking the whole way, and it takes you, who knows, I don't know, a couple years. You don't have cameras, and you don't have video. All you have is just your memory, and maybe you make a couple drawings of people, but let's say you're not an artist, so you can't really make drawings of people. You're not going to be able to remember or take note of how to classify all the differences that you see. And so you're not even going to notice it in some ways, right? Skin tone, skin pigmentation between Turkey and down to Namibia is going to change so gradually and so on that you're like, different things will change, right? But now imagine you get on a boat and you're in the southern port of Cadiz in Spain, and you take a boat down to what is now Sao Paulo, Brazil, and you get off the boat, or what is Hispaniola, or Haiti and Dominican Republic, and this is now the 16th century, and you get off the boat and you see people. It is just like night and day. And so you're going to start thinking about classification systems really fast, and this is what we saw among the Europeans. Like, the world is really big, and there are different types of people, and we're going to create these systems, right? And so what they did was just create the peoples of Africa, and they weren't traveling all through Africa. They were traveling in particular areas of Africa. So they say, okay, these are Negroid, and it come, if you think in Negro, black, right? So you come from this. And then you have Mongoloid, the Mongol people, right? So you have in Asia. And then you have Caucasoid, the Caucasian people, which, by the way, is like our peoples from, which would be like the Caucasus regions, like what it would now be like the Chechen people of like not Turkmenistan, but
I just assume like the Vikings in Sweden.
No, it's not. It was actually named after people in what would be like, say, southern Russia. It was I forget who came up with the name, but because he thought that they were, of all the white people, he thought that they were the most beautiful, the people of the Caucasus region, right? So he called white people Caucasoids. Anyway, which is kind of wild. So then so people just came up with like these three terms, right? And they say, okay, there are three races in the world. And then people started to expand that to 4 and then 8. And then suddenly we get to realizing where we are now, that you can't classify a set number of people. There's no specific number of groups based on our biological characteristics. So
the most beautiful people in the world were South Russian?
No, just most beautiful white people in the world.
Were South Russian, like South European Russian?
Yeah, South European. Well, it's not Russia. It was the Soviet Union, but not Azerbaijan.
Like the Polish, Latvian area?
No, south of that.
Oh.
Yeah, look, can someone just...
Yeah, I'm pulling up a map because this is wild.
Information.
Yeah. I would have it.
I mean, of course...
Kazakhstan, maybe? No, I don't.
This is just wild to me.
Yeah, just think like north of Turkey.
Okay.
North of Turkey.
Yeah. Which is kind of cool. No, so he had the idea that those people were, and so I always, that they were the most beautiful.
Well,
it's interesting.
I was born far from there, so.
Yeah. Well, that was just his stick, right? I mean, he's just.
Well, I mean, and it's funny
so
because
you don't have to feel bad.
Well, the reason I said that in the way that I did was because most people that at least I was like that I grew up around.
Georgians. There it is. Thank you.
Okay.
Asiva, peace. Yeah.
But whenever you think of like the really white people and Caucasian, I always think of Northern European, like Norway, Sweden, Finland.
Yeah.
Like any of those Nordic states, that's what I think of. Instead of Nordic, I think Caucasian.
We're Caucasian.
Yeah, so you got to think. Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I feel like for me, if I dare to speak for the Black community as a whole, when we hear Caucasian, I'm just thinking white. I'm not thinking
the separation.
I think it's synonymous with just European as a whole.
Yeah.
Yes,
I know
concur.
Black people still use Caucasian, man. White people never say Caucasian. By the
I don't
way.
say Caucasian. I just say white.
I say Caucasian
Somehow
when
it
I
depends.
have to fill in the bubble at the DMV saying what race I am.
Mm-hmm.
See, white people need to kind of step up to the game. You know, like how Black people can define certain things as acceptable and non-acceptable, and white people haven't.
Dude, that brought
Sort
up
of stood up for that.
That's a whole
Oh
nother
my
can of
God.
worms.
that brought up something that I wanted to talk
I
about,
had an experience.
but I don't know if we can talk about it yet.
What do you want to talk about?
Get closer to the mic, Joy.
What do you want to talk about?
The fact that Black people can't be racist because there's no system behind them. Although I believe that there is a social system that is very much alive and very much oppressive towards people who aren't Black.
A what?
So, like, you know how people say that you can be, that Black people can't be racist because there's no system behind them, because you can only be prejudiced if you don't have a system.
But
System of power, yeah.
A system of power. Well, I think that socially, Black Americans have pulled themselves to a level that is a system of power. Like, they have power.
Have the
society.
power to define what's cool and hip.
But not even that. But
power
like,
to make you uncomfortable.
and I'm not
Yeah,
saying it's a
that's
bad.
true.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just trying to think of what are then the classifications that have to be different between what is racist and prejudice and discriminatory.
Yeah, definitions.
Dude, totally. We'll have Dr. Mulvey talk about that
Maybe
someday.
in Atlanta, Black people could be racist. When it comes to like infrastructures of power.
What do you mean by Atlanta?
Because Atlanta is Atlanta.
It's just like,
I
yeah,
feel
it's
like
just that
90%
black.
black in Atlanta.
Listen, I
like
would simply say
business, music, like it's Black.
I would say that there's a way in which people of African ancestry, certainly in the U.S., I'll just say people of African ancestry, have an immense amount of credibility in the ability in defining what it is and is not hip and cool. And other groups have just sort of looked to the Black community also for what is and is not hip and cool, and don't even know that they're doing that, and they defer. People defer, and that doesn't mean the Black community defines everything, right? Like the whole movement of like wearing like Tim's, like boots. Tim's, white people were wearing
Shout
Tim's
out to
back
my
in
New
the
York
60s and
Earths.
70s. But nonetheless, there's just a lot of
I've been thinking about that recently.
a lot of power there that we don't talk about. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Black privilege.
No, but you know what? It's not even that. It's just a really fascinating sociological process by which hipness and coolness can be shaped by the very people that are at the same time not always treated with equality and respect. I could just say it like that. Can be treated very negatively and yet still looked to as being like, okay, who's hip, who's cool, who's got, we'll let you define it for us. Because it's not, come on, man, when's the last time that white people did something that's like,
Cool.
that is defined and accepted as cool? Like, what, fanny packs are back. You know why? Because we white people, we all wear fanny packs, and then we suddenly get disparaged, and then like Black people discover them out of nowhere, and suddenly they're back in, and now white people are back wearing fanny packs because a few Black people decided they were cool. Now, it's not that simple, but there's still something to be discovered there. It's really fascinating, you know. And that's not that's not, and I'm not equalizing it. That's not what it is. I'm just saying, I think you brought it up. This is just a different kind. It's just a really fascinating conversation.
You were going to bring up a story
My
or something.
experience. All right, and it kind of ties in perfectly with what you said. So I met this guy who's from Cameroon. Cameroon. And I don't remember what we were talking about. We were just having a general conversation. And oh shit. Hold on, let me think. Well, where the story goes is that he had brought up like the fact that he was like, white people can't take a joke. Like you say something to a white person and you know that you hurt their feelings. And I was talking about the class where is her name Deandra? One of the class, and there was white fragility that she was talking about, and then we also talked about it in the podcast about how I think my response is like it's something like it's a thing because he's talking to me about his experience, obviously not being born and raised in of America, and to come from Cameroon and be at a place like State College, that's something that he's noticing just from his own personality, which is something I enjoy. An African personality, especially men, they're fucking hilarious. But it's just the way that they talk, and just even I don't know, African American as well. Like, or at least I can speak from me being from Philly. Grind time, like you will get like when someone grinding you up. We are purposely busting. If you don't know what busting is, it's just like I'm
having fun with.
I'm like making jokes. I'm talking shit about you. Like, yes, if we're taking it out of context, dropping the jokes, the shit will hurt your feelings or should. But obviously, we know that that's not the case. But you can't do that with white people. He's saying that he noticed.
I mean, you can't do it with this white dude, but that's just because.
Well, hang on though. So, what do you think about that? Were you in agreement?
No, absolutely, because I think it I think he was just talking about casually, but it resonated thinking about the conversation we had in the lecture. That is the case because white people don't think about things, and I think it relates for what you're saying about how you look to the black community for defining what is or isn't okay. Because if you don't get checked, you think it like the discussion around whether we can say the N-word or not. Even if it's in music. The fact that you are even comfortable enough to try to argue with a black person as why it's okay is ridiculous. Because it either shows that you clearly don't think about it or you just don't have respect.
No. Or you do think about it. And you have a lot to say about it, and you're comfortable with it, and you know what you're talking about, and so you're going to have the argument with the person. Like I could come up with an argument for why it would be okay for me to drop N-bombs. I mean, I could, but I could come up with an argument. I'm not saying that. And if I came up with an argument, I might come up with an argument. I don't know. Who knows? But let me leave that. Listen, let me go back to this other one. I wouldn't make the argument that I should drop N-bombs because I don't really care. The other side about white people having or being, what did you say? White people are
fragile. White fragility.
Yeah, no, not that. But you said something else. Like
you can't joke with them.
You can't joke with them because the deep fear is that we're racist. Mm-hmm. We will be called out as racist. Mm-hmm. So if you start joking with us, we're now like walking in this world of like, hang on a second.
What kind of jokes are we talking about?
Well, let's just say any jokes, right? Social jokes, political jokes, whatever it is. And so like,
I'm talking about your mama.
Yeah.
Where are we getting racial at?
Well, the fear is if you say something.
I'm talking about your busted ass boots.
Well, the fear is that they might lose control for a hot second and say something that they're going to be like, oh, so you think that, so you're racist. Like, that's the white fear right there.
I think you're right on for a lot of people.
Also, someone in the chat said that white people make kale cool, so you got to come up with an argument to that.
That's nice. No, Beyonce made kale cool.
No, we have to get this right. Kale isn't cool. It's like 50 steps below.
I'll take some spinach.
I was gonna say spinach. It's like way below spinach. Spinach at least gave what's his face muscles.
Oh, Popeye.
Popeye muscles. So.
Popeye.
Hey, wait! I want to go back.
Someone
to
just
that.
made a really good point, though. Hold on.
Another thing I think is interesting to like explore the thought of is with the expeditionist. And the chance of those individuals being who they are and the way that they view, identify, or define things like views.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it's had so much to do with those individuals for whatever their governmental structure and societal views already were.
Yeah.
But if you could just imagine if it was a individual, even if they still were a white person, who, if they just didn't go there, like if it wasn't about seeing the differences and categorizing the masses and then putting the less than values and creating the hierarchy, where would we be today? Or how would these words and terms be defined now?
Would totally different. Totally different. They would have less power. We'd be just thinking completely differently. And we wouldn't focus on these. We wouldn't even be having conversations about like, white people can't take a joke, or white people, or black people, or brown people, or Mexican, whatever. We wouldn't do that.
Or what would it be like if everybody just stayed the fuck still?
Just what?
Stay still.
Stay still. Just
this
chill.
land is my land.
Listen, wait.
That land is your land.
Okay, that'd be a very different.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how most wars have started, saying this land is my land and that is your land, or that's not your land at all.
No, this land is mine and that is mine too. Right. Yeah, that's what it is. Hey, wait, I want to go back to what Niche said, because it's actually really... What you said
someone
was...
brought up a point on the chat saying that white people are more concerned with looking racist than actually being racist. Or like coming across as racist.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people who aren't racist have that fear of being racist, because it takes...
There's a reaction to it.
It's not just a reaction, but like... If my black friends thought that I was racist, it would have a really negative impact on my life. And so I can't make a joke in a community. Can I give an example? Remember that one time that we were hanging out and we were playing, you and someone else were playing chess?
Okay.
So this is years ago. But you were playing chess with somebody else, and there were whoever had the white pieces, it was white and black pieces. Whoever had the white pieces was destroying the rest of was destroying the game. And so there's like
I don't know
there's like 75% of the pieces are the white pieces, and I looked and I'm surrounded by, I think I'm the only white person, and I said, "Hey, look, it's a racial makeup of the United States." This is 2 years ago maybe.
I'm really trying to remember this.
And
Jeff,
I haven't played chess a lot.
But I said that, hey, it looks like a racial makeup of the United States.
Such a dumb joke.
But everyone laughed, and I was like, okay, thank God, because...
Oh, you held your breath after that? Like
I said, literally the words came out of my mouth, and I was like, no.
Pulling back.
But everyone laughed, and it was cool, but
it could have gone the other way.
But in that moment, I was terrified that I just made some racist joke. Because
race related. I think there's a difference between race relation,
race related joke that fell flat. That's the way Niche. That's what you were saying. Like if I if we start doing some
like if we start on
Yo Mama
session,
stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not used to that, so I'm gonna jump into some I'm gonna throw some Yo Mamas out also. And now we're going to touch on race. Let's say you do a Yo Mama joke with me about like your mama's so white that da da da, and I'm going to well Yo Mama's so black that, and then like, oh man, hang on.
Oh, did you just call my mama black?
Yo, exactly. I don't even know. That might be what comes back at me. Like, yo, you can't call my mama black. Like, oh. And so if you're not black. Used to, it's not just that. It's that white people aren't used to being in the field of race. So like you don't know like what you could and couldn't say. And this is what I mean about I could make an argument for how I could drop the N-bomb that I even making the argument, I know what all the landmines are of stupid arguments that I would never make because they would just immediately mean like this guy's just a stupid white dude. But I'd be able to take pieces of it that would be complex enough to avoid those landmines of stupidity, right? And I could make a really like a thoughtful argument that you'd have to say, nobody would look at me and say, "Oh, dude, you're just racist." They would look at me and say, "I don't even know what you're talking about, maybe." But But this is what I mean. Like, if you're not used to it, you can't even do a yo mama joke on race issues because you don't even know. Like, damn, just like that. If I started with yo mama's so black, that might be it right there. And so that's what it is. It's like not so much that we can't take a joke. It's like we can't participate in that level of joking when it comes about race, when we might say something wrong.
And it's not necessarily because of how we will be viewed. It's also, at least in the moment I just described, I was afraid that I was going to make someone feel uncomfortable in that moment. And it necessarily wasn't, oh, this guy's racist. It was like, I don't want to say anything that would upset the group. But I mean, that was my thought post saying it. So when people are in that situation, it's not like, it's not just, am I going to seem like a racist? It's at least
because it's coming from you as a white person.
Yeah.
Like what Sam's saying about black people having more power to define. And I think this might have been something that was said even like last year. Like certain words and delivering a message on a topic has more power out of a certain mouth, and specifically a black face. It has a little bit more weight and you're going to heed more to it. But I do think that it is, when it comes to white people and how comfortable they are or aren't, it does have to do with their own engagement in it. Because even like something that I notice just watching TV news all the time, or having regular conversations, even like in the dialogues that I would to do with our labs when I took Social 19. Even in casual conversation, when a white person is speaking and it comes up, first thing is how white people either feel comfortable having to interchange black or African American. Yeah. And if they do decide to say black, it's, oh yeah, but this black guy, like when we get to black, the volume goes down. Totally. Like why?
Even to say it is potentially a problem.
But I think I had to tell someone it was okay to say black one time, black. And I was like, why do you feel like it's wrong? That's what we are.
No, because it's like, because you just don't know, and if you're not participating in the if you're not engaged in a conversation, if you're not part of a community, then that means you're not engaged in the conversation. And if you're not engaged in the conversation, you don't know what and how to say things. It's like, it's just so like, and then what you have is you always have some people that just they become really extreme and demanding, because you'll have someone that'll be like, never call me black. And all you need is one story like that. I'm not black. I'm like that. That's racist, let's say, right? And all you need is one of those to say, okay, I'll just keep my mouth shut.
Forever.
It's like,
I was going to say it's almost like when you're learning another language, you're going to a place that speaks that language, and you don't know the language. It's so much harder. And I was like, but that's a foreign language. But even in English, speaking to another person in English, it can be so different that you don't know, like exactly what you said. When you aren't involved, when you aren't and you're not in these conversations, even the language is going to trip you up. And so this person told me that they weren't black, I think, and so now I can't call anyone black. So now I'm just going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs and let everyone else have the conversation.
Or say y'all. And I've got that. The first exam day. Not trying to put anybody on blast, but Lauren did this. And I came late. And I think she thought I was, I don't think she thought I was niche, but niche was upstairs in the room, in the other exam room. And I think this might have been when it was winding down and she was trying to collect all the exams. And she was like, there's another one upstairs. And I just knew that she was talking about niche. And I'm like, niche, I guess she's upstairs. I don't know because I got here late. But I'm assuming because we were trying to figure out, because there was also people outside and they were coming back in.
Wait,
and we didn't know if they were still taking the exam or the other students.
Another room upstairs?
Yeah, like
when they
go, I think they go to 101.
Yeah.
For more space to take the exams. But she didn't know Nisha's name. So she came up to me when I got there and asked me, but she was just like, there's another one. As in another black girl, because we are the only two.
As opposed to another, which might have been another room, though.
No. She meant because she wanted to
maybe
know
another
she wanted to know where she was
person?
with the exams.
Yeah, I got you, man. Yeah.
Could she have meant Could she have met another director?
No.
And see, this is a conversation that white and black people have because they'll be like, well, do you actually mean that they were talking about a black person?
This is the most common conversation between white and black people ever. Like,
dude,
what did they mean when they said
yesterday,
that?
And I know.
Wait, hang on though. I want to make sure we get back to the chat. There's an interesting conversation about music on the chat that I just want to weigh in on.
Country music was invented by
black people.
Yep.
Black
so was rock and roll. So was punk rock.
Here's what we
regular rock.
Did you?
Black
oh my
people
God!
make
Did you ever
things
look
cool.
up
Y'all just gotta
the shit with
accept it.
Elvis? Somebody please. Who is Elvis, and is he really the originator of rock and roll?
He is not
yes
the
or
originator
no?
of rock and roll. We share the same last name, but he is not that cool to me.
It's not Elvis, my friend. Listen,
he was just the most sexual one that was on TV.
Yeah, and then he died on the toilet. So
yeah, he did.
Listen, I didn't know that.
He had some sort of heart problem. Died on the toilet.
Oh damn! Sitting on the toilet. Sitting on the toilet.
Flush.
Look,
just dies.
The banjo which is really essential for country music, less so blues music, but the banjo was brought over from Africa. And
I did not know this.
Many music styles are brought over from Africa, and really about slaves, blues, country, etc. Slaves creating genres of music, because you think about it, you have Africans coming from different parts of Africa, speaking different languages with different musical styles, and the ability to, with different rhythms, bringing different rhythms together. And suddenly now people are going to start putting music together with all these. You really have to think these very, just immensely different cultures. And different languages, different everything. And,
yes, abracadabra. I said that.
And so you really just see all these musical forms. But it's not that. This is the thing. But country music, as it emerged in the white community, has elements that came from the black community, but it also had elements that came from other communities. So it's really is not. It's not. You can't just say it was birthed in the black community, because certain pieces of it were birthed in the black community, but then other elements come from other communities. So and it's not just white communities, it's the same thing. White people come from so many different places in Europe with so many different musical genres and languages and ways and rhythms and melodies, and it starts to all come together in these really fascinating ways. So it's this Creole of musical mixes, but none of it would have happened without the contributions of different groups.
Would you say that those contributions for some of the genres were what was implemented after something was recreated to be televised and on the radios by white people? Because that's a lot of the music. That's what it was.
Look, there's no way in which, say, like rock and roll, the way it got kind of formulated, right? There's no way that you could make the argument that white people, quote, invented rock and roll, right? But you couldn't make the argument that black people invented rock and roll either, right? So, but it's this Creole of genres that all come together, that everyone needed everybody else. And it is the white community that probably more than anything absolutely define what got on the radio, and so what got popularized and so on. That's not.
I mean, because they would literally take already created songs, re-record them, switch it up whichever way. Well, not giving credit to the original artist. Black.
Okay, that is true. Like the original, like blues artists and so on that never really got recorded. There's so many people that it just got handed down. Look, here's an example. Like the people would hear slaves singing songs, or post-slavery in the Reconstruction period, hearing black musicians singing songs and then going and recreating the song. The melody, and then changing some of the words and so on, right? And no one having any idea that it goes back to this person, this former slave, let's say, right, who really was singing this song while working somewhere, right? Anything you can imagine happened. That's not a question. But just as much as you couldn't say that white people didn't invent something, what happens is sometimes this is where we go. We go from here, like, everyone wants to say, like, hey, it all came from this one group. And then we say, no, my God, no, it didn't do that. Like, it's not all about white people. And then what we do is go back in the exact opposite direction and make the claim that it's all about black people. When in fact it wasn't all about black people either. It's always a mixture of things. It's just that what happened is that the black half of the creation, part of the creation, didn't get credit for the importance of the black part of the creation. So therefore we kind of lose sight of that. But to deny the white part, and again, mostly these are not rich white people. These are like poor whites. Like, so hillbilly, right? The idea of where's hillbilly come from? Well, the idea is the Scots-Irish in the Appalachians. In the Scots-Irish, you either were named Hill or you were named William, and somewhere in there was there, and so people started using hillbilly. I mean, it might be an apocryphal story, but I think it's actually I think it's where that comes from. But these are poor white people, working in the mines and so on, right? So coming up with this called hillbilly music. Well, it has African influences for sure, but there are also pieces of hillbilly music that doesn't really have any African influence because it's so deep in the heart of poor white communities in Appalachia, right? So it's just so it's cool. It's really cool. It's very complex. So do you have what do you think about that?
About folk music?
No, I know. I think in some ways what music. I say is I think that just like white people try to appropriate certain things, I think black people as well.
What do you want, A-turns?
Try to appropriate things.
Give us a topic.
Taking, just as a way to just sort of stand up to white people saying like, yeah, you didn't do all this. It's like, we did it. It's like, you can't say that either.
So we're being asked to move on.
Yeah.
And
suggestions.
All right.
And we also talked about class for about 4 minutes.
Oh, what it was?
We pretty much just said choice and chance.
I mean, we've been doing well, kind of looping it back. I tried.
Kind of.
Well, it was a choice to move on to this topic, so we didn't really move away from class.
Or was it chance through natural conversation flow?
Word association.
Basically.
Valid points. Let's discuss.
Somebody said that you were wrong about music, though, Sam.
What am I wrong about?
I don't know. I asked them to say more, but
isn't folk music from Germany and no? Listen, man. Folk music is from. When we talk about folk music, what we're talking about is music that it really sort of emerges. That it's not. How do I say, like commercialized in any way, and emerges sort of out of the day-to-day lives of people, the everyday lives of people, right? So if you look at some of the great folk artists like Woody Guthrie and stuff like that, they're really writing songs about life as they see it on the ground. So I think that's really what we mean by folk. Folk has become popularized in some way. Wait, what do you think?
I have no idea what's going on. So for those of you listening on audio, Tarnisha and Joy have.
I forgot y'all could see that.
Sometimes my face makes expressions out loud that I don't mean it to do.
Wait, hang on. Cultural appropriation.
That's what we were making the faces at.
Yeah.
Well, cultural appropriation is not a myth,
hang on. So cultural.
What was can we say what the comment was first?
It says that cultural appropriation isn't real, another sociological myth. Okay. I would like to debunk that myth. First of all, cultural appropriation is very real. Can we look at?
Hang on, though. I might agree with him. So
okay,
let's go.
well, let me define cultural appropriation.
Okay, all right.
It's just the taking of culture and not giving credit to where you got your inspiration from, and saying that you created it.
If you know where you got your inspiration,
if you know where you got it from, and you know what the heck it's called, and then you go and take it and you don't give credit to where you got it from, that's cultural appropriation. In educational terms, it's called plagiarism. First of all, that's wrong. You get expelled from places from doing that.
Yeah, okay, I got
sued.
That. All right. Okay, so listen. Here's what I would say. I think most people who most times we feel influences, like cultural influences from other groups or other experiences. We don't even know that we're being influenced by them. You know, like I have like, I think it's just all of us, right? We don't even know. Like you don't, maybe you have the flower in your hair. Maybe
that's a Hawaiian thing. You're taking appropriation from Hawaii.
Yeah, exactly, dog. Maybe you don't. Maybe you. It's just things like there are things that we see, we hear a musical genre. We don't even know that's what it is.
There's a difference between me wearing a flower in my hair because I like it, and then me saying, "Oh my God, I'm the first person ever to wear a flower in my hair. Let's call this style something that I made up."
Okay, but I'm not.
I'm with you.
If I'm wearing a Native American Halloween costume and I'm appropriating their culture, it's not that I'm saying I'm the first person to ever do this. I'm saying that I enjoy this costume and I don't care what anybody says about it.
But I'm not sure that would be appropriation per se. That would be
that's character.
People would call it bad taste.
I think
that's bad taste.
But
like
some people would call it appropriation, and that's what I mean. It's not appropriation, and I think
but appropriation was the word that was used when, like, in Social 19 for the past few years. Every time that we talk about costumes,
not by me, my friend. I don't use that word. I never use it because I don't think that. I think that I think it's one of those words that people on the left have grabbed onto, and they use it very haphazardly, and they use it very quickly, and oftentimes too quickly, and so it becomes this thing that they don't even know what they mean because they've never been asked to define it.
That's very true.
And so, so for me, I think that we live in this world where cultures are coming together from all over the world in so many different ways, and they come at us fast and furiously, right? Just like, you know, Joy, you were talking about in Korea, like the hip hop scene in Korea. And what are they going to do in the hip hop scene in Korea? They're going to mirror the hip hop scene in the U.S., right? And so, of course, they are, right? So you could say like they're appropriating it, or that's what people would say. But people wouldn't. But see, if white people did that, people would be very quick to say, "Oh, you're appropriating the culture." And if Koreans do that, then people, I would argue, would be less. They still would. Many people would still say it, but they wouldn't be as quick to say it. And
because they're not white.
Exactly.
But for me, the thing that kind of sets the tone with appropriation comes from when it's something that you do for the sake of sales, trends, and profit. It's just overall for the sake of profit.
Yeah, like someone on the
chat. And it's all cool, but then when we have our social issues, where you at?
Yeah, like
I got
where you at?
Aziva piece.
Yo,
just
hang
like
on, read Aziva's. Read that really fast.
Cultural appropriation is definitely when you're rocking Bantu knots and then it's whack, but then Sally wears it and okay, I'm trying to read it word for word. And now the mini buns and ghetto do-rags are satin wraps in Paris Fashion Week.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So basically, double standard.
Yeah, that's
for sure. Is
that's
also
appropriation.
Okay, I'm a little more understanding of this now. It's not just the fact that I'm taking your culture; it's that
you can take the culture, but then it's cool when you do it, but when I do it, it's seen as an issue.
Cool. I see that.
Or it's just not, or it's like
for
not
the relations
it's not
of the black.
It's not good. It's
when
good.
I do something, it's not beautiful, but then Sally in the corner wants to do it because she sees me do it, and everyone's fawning over her and thinking she's cool.
So, for instance, now I understand why people were saying that a white girl that I was with down in Haiti was culturally appropriating people because she got locks done.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or like cornrows.
Cornrows and stuff.
That's a big thing. All the tourists go to the Caribbean and they get cornrows.
Right. And so they're. But what she did was she was talking to a Haitian girl and she was like, "I do hair," and she was like, "Do mine? I'll give you a couple of dollars." Like this is her
thing,
job,
man.
Right?
So you go, like when I was in the DR years ago, I can't tell you how many women were walking up and down the beach with little folders of all the different ways they could do. Like Lori's hair. Lori at the time had long hair. It's like, oh, we can do this. We can do. Oh, they just wanted a couple bucks, man. Like so, Lori. I don't think Lori ever said yes. There were a couple of them who were like, we just gave them a couple dollars and said, no, don't do the hair, but here's a couple dollars, right? But the moment she says yes, even just to give them. This is their living, man. This is how they make their living. To doing these tourists that are coming down. 80% of whom are white. And okay, so this is what you do. So okay, go ahead and put my hair up
however you want.
And then I'll take it out. But all right, good. But that would be the kind of thing where it's just like, okay, this feels really weird.
It's another one of those words that's like, it varies on how someone defines and view it. So like that kind of example, because the conversation, well, is it okay or is it really the biggest deal if a white person locks their hair or not? But that doesn't, like, if I'm sticking to what I just said, how I define it, that doesn't have anything to do. If it's some individual just walking down the street, clearly, they're not making money off of that. But it's then the argument when it comes for that I hear, the conversation is around, well, it's not the origin of your people to do. Like, your hair, first of all,
which I have a problem with where you're going on that. It's just like
from the beginning, from the get-go, excluding the influences. Would you have done that in the first place? Was that something that's done in your culture?
No,
from where the origin
wouldn't.
Of your
but
family is?
But the idea is, like, if you're just copying a style because you think, hey, that's kind of cool, right? That's not. I'm not going to go down the road of appropriation. Like, hey, I just kind of like that, so I'm going to copy the style, and it's good. But it's when I take the style, then and somehow it turns around in my community or my people turn it around to something like really good for me, uplift it for me, like when we do it, but still don't like it when those other people do it from whom we got the style in the first place. It's like, okay, hang on a second, right? Like the music's not any good when they do it, but when we do the same thing and we like flip it in some way, then it's like, oh, hey, this is really good. That's when it starts to be appropriation. But just borrowing somebody's style is like,
I can just hear the music that's going on in Wire Thomas.
And I think that, right, like black women wearing blonde wigs is cultural appropriations, people would say.
Yes.
Invalid.
I put on different color hair.
Let's break it down.
But again, it's like, it's this thing. It's like, God, we just want to fight and argue about all these little tiny things that are, you know what? People want to many people want to fight and argue about these tiny little things just because they have nothing else to do with their life. So it's just like
assimilation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, exactly. Man.
Period. Poo.
It's like someone in the chat was like, "Well, what's an example of your cultural appropriation?" And like Joy's definition of like taking and making profit off it. Some little white lady was online selling do-rags and satin bonnets that black people have been doing for a hot minute, selling them for like $100, and we're like, okay, well.
Hey, listen though. Hang on a second though, man. So in Europe,
that happened.
Hang on. Though the whole the do-rag idea and wearing tight scarves on your head and so on. This is also a style that goes back centuries in Europe.
Yeah, I know.
Right before Europeans started to underdevelop Africa. So there are also styles. When you look at certain styles, a lot of times because many of the people talking about these issues are young and have never studied history because they're not interested in history, and they don't study fashion throughout history over the past 1,000 years or so. They don't see that these styles, like when you go through the museums and the Louvre or the Prado and the Louvre in Paris or the Prado in Madrid, and you see these paintings from the 13th, 14th, and 15th century of all the Europeans and the styles that very much look African and did not get these styles. Some came from Africa or the Middle East, but many just are part of European culture. So if you don't study that stuff, you don't know that that's also what's going on. And so then we can have an argument about stuff that we don't really know about.
Could you argue that person not knowing that either?
What's that?
Could you argue that individual not knowing it? Because in the timeline of history, I think she'd know that after, so more recently than whatever those also original, not influenced by African culture, European hairstyles that have to do with hair wrap was another form of oppression in American history with having black women cover their hair?
No, because I think the hair wraps that came from Africans, the hair wraps in the African community just came from somewhere else. Look, I mean, it's like wrapping your hair. There are only so many things you can do with your hair, man. If it has coils or curl or waves or curls in it, you can straighten it. If it's straight, you can put waves or coils or curls in it. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do. You can color it or you can not color it. And so the human beings, every style of dress you can imagine, it's somewhere around the world. And so human beings can only do so many things. And so when you see certain styles in somebody today or at any point in history, it's like, well, lots of people had that same style in different places in the world.
Is it relevant if they don't know, though?
No, yeah, if they don't. You mean, yeah, it's relevant. What do you mean?
Is it like what I just said about the history behind, in this moment in time where it's implemented for white women wanted black women to cover their hair out of their own insecurities, thinking that white men were more attracted to black women.
Yeah.
Rape, not a choice.
Hang on, though. That's not.
Even though.
Hang on, that's. There's a. I'm not entirely sure. You can't make that statement in that way. Like you can say, in some places that's true.
Having
for some
black women cover their
yes,
hair.
For some people it was true. Right. And for some people that's a reason they had black women around them covering their hair. But that's not true across the board. For some black women, it's because they brought certain styles. They brought ways of dressing or of wrapping their hair. From different places.
That's what I'm getting at. I'm saying if in this point in time, as an American-born slave, not having the history of culture, language, of like pretty much where we are today, there, because not to mention at this time you can't read. You're told what they're told. So even though at this moment, as an African descended person, yes, we have our original ties with having that as a style prior to, but I don't know that. So where I'm introduced to covering my hair is because this white woman wants me to. Where I fall because of white
X,
men.
Y, or Z reason.
So is it relevant if you don't know it?
I suppose it is. Yeah, I suppose.
Is that actually the influence? Yes, it's a thing, but it's not a thing if you don't know it. Kind of like, does a tree fall? If a tree falls and no one's there, do you hear it? Yeah.
Well,
no. Like, what's the answer?
Okay, so here's my take. This is always my take on things. Life, cross-cultural relations, which is everything that we're talking about. Certainly, it's what Social 19 is about. Is just always immensely more complex than we imagine it to be. And so I just know that when I pick up any book that I pick up, let's say I just pick up a book about hairstyles, right? And over the centuries, right? Or wrapping hair over the centuries. All I know is that so let's say I pick it up by an historian who's just has spent a lifetime or even 10 years deeply, purposefully studying the issue. All I know is by the time I get to the end of that book, I will guarantee that I will say, wow, I really had this stuff is way more complex than I ever imagined it to be. And then if I listen to 20-year-olds or 25-year-olds or 30-year-olds having a conversation about race and like, let's say something like hair wrapping, all I'll know is I'll just be shaking my head going like, you have no idea what you're talking about such a very tiny limited slice of the pie. This is really immensely complex. Which is why I don't talk about a lot of things like for me in class because I can't even start. Where do you start, man? The historians got it down, but if you brought a historian here to talk about it, they'd put everybody to sleep.
Yeah,
and no one would bother to read the whole book because it's just okay, whatever. It's just less interesting, and so I just and then I get embarrassed, man. Every time I read something like that, who knows, anything. I get embarrassed about all the dumb things that I've said over the years. And that's
but now you know better.
What's that?
But now you know better.
But I don't because anything I talk about is dumb. If I read the right book to see how complex the issue is, I have to say, wow, you can't ever talk about that again. So,
I have an unrelated comment. Yes. I just remembered what happened 25 minutes ago.
What happened 25 minutes ago?
We were talking about something yesterday.
They, them, what, who? Yes.
Yesterday we were talking about something that comes out at 1 o'clock.
Are you looking at it? Oh my God! Why would you tell me that right now?
Good luck
Would you like
it.
to give context to what Joy is screaming about?
Oh, Jeff, go ahead.
It's a it's a makeup thing.
Oh my God!
Hold on.
Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson put out their collaborative conspiracy palette, and it went on sale 25 minutes ago. And
Is it sold out? Did the website crash?
Let me just say, I tried to add things to a cart, and I'm getting error messages.
Wait, what is this? Makeup?
So,
Yes.
do you know who Jeffree Star is?
You know, I should because I want to be hip and cool. I should say, oh yeah, I know who Jeffree Star is.
You don't have to know. It's
Okay,
fine.
I
I honestly would not care for you to know.
Oh,
Yeah.
this guy. Oh yeah, I know that dude.
Which people have
I
been
know.
coming at him lately, saying
Her.
that
Wait, is it he, her,
He.
they? He doesn't.
It's whatever you want to call him. I'm speaking like I know him personally. I
See,
just
this
watch
is
all
what I
his
mean,
videos.
right? This is what's awesome.
Well, what's interesting, and the reason I wanted to bring this up is
Wait,
just
are these two people who are feuding?
No,
No.
they're collaborating. So Jeffree Star was a YouTuber. Well, first Shane Dawson was a YouTuber way back in like 2005, 2006.
And
Like
Jeffree
when
Star was on
YouTube,
MySpace.
he was on MySpace, and
music.
he was a freaking mess. Like
So
awful.
there's hope for me. In about 10 years, maybe I won't be a mess.
But
just
he,
put out a makeup palette and you'll be fine.
so Jeffree Star was like one of the first people on MySpace that was really, he was out, he was proud, he was very feminine, loud, obnoxious, pretty racist.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me because I was having a conversation with the person who I share an office with, and she was like, "Oh, I hate Jeffree Star because he's so racist." But then I talk to people like
can't relate.
because there's people like Joy who know Jeffree Star, but like still.
Because like today, like this, the way I try to, if I care to take the time to explain it to people, because like if someone say, well, I choose not to support this person because XYZ and it being like racism, it would make me know better than a white person trying to tell me how I, as a black person, should feel about certain things.
Listen, man.
But it's kind of like the same issue with Kevin Hart, with him having to apologize over his homophobic tweets. Again, like it's something he's already done. And kind of like what you were just saying about your reading and things that you come to know, we all over time grow and learn things.
Exactly.
And he's not that same person today.
Right.
So
It's
I'm going to
just-
buy his makeup and watch his videos and subscribe.
Hey, listen, man.
But anyway,
I just don't find them entertaining, so I don't.
When we're recording this, about 28 minutes ago, they officially put it live on their
launched.
website, and I can't put it in my cart.
This is crazy.
Let me tell you, if they sell out of the first section of pallets, if they sell out currently, Shane Dawson will make
he will be a millionaire.
$10 million.
He will break down. First of all, he's already been crying.
He's already been crying. But then here's the crazy thing. That's
because Shane Dawson.
Wait, hang on.
Well, no. I just need to explain real quick. So he's gonna make $10 million if it sells
selling makeup.
Yes.
On this order
Collection.
currently. So they're gonna have more, and he's gonna make more.
And he only
Jeffree
did
Star is going to make
500,000 units, I think.
Jeffree Star is going to make approximately $30 million.
He's already. First of all, I don't know how much money he already has, but this isn't.
Hundreds of millions.
If Shane's about to make $10 million, this is not the first release of Jeffree Star.
No, this
and
is
like
seven,
he has so much shit.
6.
He has more merchandise. He has clothing and stuff as well.
Oh man, this is
but that always sells out.
I'm
Blue
blown
Blood
away, man.
still don't have.
I'm blown away by how
Me too.
How unbelievably
not to mention how much they probably make off
segmented
YouTube.
the culture is layered. How layered our culture is. How much is going on in the world. It's amazing to me.
To respond to the comments, I don't have anything to do with makeup. I don't know a single
This is
thing
Jeffree Star,
about-
not Jeffrey Hamill.
Right.
Right.
We spell our names differently. But I couldn't tell you. I mean, I can guess what a concealer does. Do you have to put foundation for it? Like, I don't know any of this stuff.
Neither do I, and I'm a woman.
And here's an interesting thought. Men wearing and selling makeup sounds like cultural appropriation.
That was a comment that was just made.
Yo,
like
except
women culture.
There you go.
But that isn't necessarily true because men aren't then going back and saying women who do it.
But the liberals, the people who would call the liberal people who would call something like this cultural appropriation wouldn't in this case, because it would be like, oh, they wouldn't even think it was the same thing. Yeah,
What's
well.
that? I don't know.
Hey, listen, I think we're at 1:30, and so.
Aw, do we have to stop talking about Jeffree Star?
Sorry for bringing it up, I guess. Any last comments from the chat while we have the chance? And then, I just thought it was very interesting bringing some culture.
And then I totally forgot about it today.
Yeah.
We were early. Me and my friend were sorry twice.
Listen, I want to respond to Sunsnap, who said, and this is important because, listen, I'll tell you why it's important. Because, meaning I don't know who either of these two people are. I don't know what they're about. But the fact that we are morphing into a culture where men here you have these two kind of YouTubers, right, who emerge out of nowhere, who are talking about selling, demonstrating, and showing people how to wear makeup, including women. And these really are popular in this own very large segment of the culture is phenomenally fascinating to me as a sociologist.
And on the platform, they can.
And a platform, like, oh man, it's just like where have we come to and where are we going? Mm-hmm. So, it's fascinating, and that there are all these so many people out there who find them to be really interesting and whatever. Like, I just find it fascinating, man.
But don't get it twisted. We will never come to a time where it's okay
I wasn't
for a white
anything
person
for
to
Halloween,
say
by the way.
Don't do that. We will never be at a time.
Hey, but someone asked what I was for Halloween. Can I heard someone say the word,
and I was like, first of all, who was it? We're going to have a discussion.
Let's sit down now.
By the way,
and let me talk to you.
Their subscriptions combined are
Shane has
almost
20
30
million?
Almost 30 million subscribers together.
30 million subscribers. So think about that.
Shane
right?
Dawson has 23 million. Jeffree Star 16.4
Listen, man,
million.
that's amazing to me. So if you want to understand where culture is going, like if you really think you want to understand the world, this has the United States anyway. This has to be part of your understanding.
And with it being on YouTube and all over the world, it's so much further than just.
Hey, we're going to talk about this on. We're going to talk about sort of like flower boys and stuff on.
And we can
Tuesday.
do it in Korea too, because the definition, the standards of beauty in Korea are just across Asia as a whole is completely different. And we talked about this before, and the way Asian men are or aren't viewed as masculine in American standards.
Oh,
and
my
even
gosh.
them, just in their own
beauty,
beauty, like men, it's not gay for a man to wear eyeliner in Korea.
Oh yeah. Oh, listen, man, we're
definitely
on this.
can get there.
All right, so listen.
What were you for Halloween?
I was nothing for Halloween, but one of our former TAs sent Lori a message last night. He said I was so uninspired to find a costume that I dressed up as Sam on Halloween.
Someone dressed up as you?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
What are they
I don't know. He didn't send a photo.
Put the earrings.
I didn't send a photo, but he said he was so uninspired to come up with his own costume that he just out of sheer boredom he dressed up as me.
We should 100%.
I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I mean it's great. But if you get bored enough, you can dress as me.
Maybe next year I'll be Jeff for Halloween. Since someone did
Jeff.
you, I gotta be Jeff for Halloween.
I was a witch last night.
All right, listen, man.
We didn't talk about Halloween because I don't think nobody here really cares about Halloween. I mean,
it's a drinking holiday here in State College, so no one really cares.
I watched Supernatural, so
Twitches.
Yes.
Hocus Pocus.
Some Hocus Pocus. That's a good one.
We gotta cut.
Sam trying to leave.
Okay. Final thoughts right now. Everyone go.
Yang Yang.
All right,
Next.
I'll go then. Everyone, stay hydrated. We are sponsored by World in Conversation, so go out in the world and conversate. Yes, I said conversate, and I meant it.
You said it twice, y'all.
Yes, I said it twice. That means I freaking meant it. And yeah, do good today.
Sam, final thought.
Right.
Just
Yang Gang.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Yang Gang
Avatar: The
2020.
Last Airbender. I'm on.
Yo,
next
wait,
time.
nope, that's a whole nother can of worms. Let's not talk about that
Wait,
right now.
Wait,
Let's talk about
did
it
you
next
say? What did you say?
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Airbender.
Airband. He
Someone
doesn't
just
know
brought
what
up in the
that is.
chat.
All
All right,
everybody.
see y'all.
See
Bye, guys.
ya.
Wouldn't wanna be.